welcome to another episode of our TrendSpotting Podcast, where we talk about all of the hot topics going around the island. And this week was the termination of Linda Uggan.
That's right, the State Historic Preservation Officer for Guam abruptly terminated, and this is caused a lot of backlash on a lot of different fronts. I mean, first of all, there's the front with the personnel rules and regulations. Obviously, everybody knows in GovGuam, it's impossible to get fired on the spot. I mean, it's a long process. The GovGuam employees have a lot of protections in place. And so there's that. There are people. I interviewed Dr. Rong Menench today, and he believes, as the representative for Linda Uggan does, that the way she was terminated flouted the rules and regulations. There was no progressive discipline. It was her first offense in 35 years.
So like no warning or nothing.
Yeah.
Well, we have a package. Let's play that package first, and then we can get into the questions about that. So Jason, if you can play that package for us.
For almost 20 years, Linda Uggan has been serving as Guam's State Historic Preservation Officer, but on Tuesday, her boss, Department of Parks and Rec Director Richard Ibanez, fired her.
It really smells of retaliation.
Uggan, represented by Guam Federation of Teachers Robert Koss, he believes she was fired because of a grievance she filed in April related to one of her employees that was detailed to the director's office. Uggan argued proper protocol was not followed and that moving her employee is hampered and will continue to hamper the division in carrying out its mandated function. She also called the move unreasonable and a total disregard of the division's mandates. Ibanez, in response, issued a notice of proposed adverse action alleging official misconduct because Uggan used a government vehicle to file the grievance. He also alleges she made false statements during a meeting in May for an investigatory review with the Attorney General's office. During that meeting, Koss denied access, and he says that means Uggan was denied her due process. On June 4th, the notice of proposed adverse action was filed, but 2 weeks later it became final, and on Tuesday, Uggan was terminated. According to Koss, an appeal will be filed with the Civil Service Commission.
The fact that he based it on the grievance, that there's no prior discipline, I would fully expect the Civil Service Commission to overturn this thing on a motion without even going to the hearing on the merits.
Uggan in recent weeks making headlines for being critical of the military's handling of ancient artifacts discovered on construction sites at Magua and the live fire training range in Machinao. Could her termination be more than just because of her grievance?
We discussed that. We're not aware of, whether or not the director has any sort of relationship with the military, and that, or other construction projects that she might be impeding. We don't have that information, and I doubt they will tell us that.
According to Governor's Communications Director Janela Carrera, the governor was not aware that the SHPO would be served with a notice of final adverse action, quote, at the time it occurred. She is aware of it now. Carrera says Ibanez will serve as the acting SHPO until the governor can appoint a new one. Guam law mandates that the SHPO must have training, work experience, and education pertinent to cultural resource management. Although he'll only be serving in an acting capacity, Ibanez has more than 20 years of managerial experience in sales and marketing, technology, golf course management, and in the beverage industry. He's also a former Guam national volleyball player. For Guam's News Network, Chris Barnett reports.
So there you saw Chris's package from the other day about the termination of Linda Uggan. Chris, can you elaborate a little bit more on the situation? So she wanted to file a complaint with the director, and
okay, so this is what we know is that she had filed a grievance, which is a standard procedure when you have any issues with your boss. You file a grievance. So she was well within her rights to file a grievance, and it stemmed from a transfer of one of her employees to the director's office. And she said that losing this employee, the Historic Preservation Office is already understaffed, underfunded. So she said that losing this employee basically is keeping them from fulfilling their statutory mandates and doing their job. And so her representative from the Guam Federation of Teachers, because she's covered under the union, had said that the adverse action issued was in retaliation for that grievance. So she was given an adverse action for using a government vehicle to deliver the grievance, which is part of her official duty. And then I think they also issued an adverse action saying that she drove in through the exit of the parking lot. Really, it just seems almost, someone had said, what is this, high school? And I said, no, I think it's middle school. When I interviewed Dr. Ron Manen today, he said basically he feels like we have an appointee leading Parks and Rec, Richard Abanez, who probably has no idea what GovGuam's personnel rules and regs are. GovGuam's real big on a progressive discipline, which is you don't get fired the first time you mess up.
Like the slap on the hand.
Some people feel like you get too many chances, but in this case, maybe not enough chances. And so, Ron McNinch, and it's interesting because Ron isn't really a partisan guy, but for him, and I know he's really pro buildup, so for him to come out on just the merits of this case, the procedure and the procedural errors, I thought was pretty interesting.
I think
There's that. Was the proper procedure followed in her termination? And I think from what we know, the answer is clearly no.
Yeah, I mean, well, we don't know everything, right?
Right.
Regarding that, but I think like the bigger underlying issue, and you touched upon that on your story, is that like now we've changed the
midstream.
Yeah, state historic preservation officer, while this construction and buildup is happening, like already underway, and like Linda Uggan had said a week ago or so, there are artifacts already found on site, and action needs to be taken now. And I think it's a lot of turmoil and conflict and trouble there to just get a new guy in there in that position.
Right. So you got to consider Linda's been very vocal, very critical, but that's her job. Her job is to protect our state's history.
Yeah, she's the watchdog.
She's doing her job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's well within her rights. But people kind of conflate her wanting to protect these ancient sites and the artifacts in them with like, oh, you're not patriotic or you're not. And you see it in the comments. There's some really idiotic comments on a lot of these stories. Any story about
we
like
can throw some of that in there, like So we had this story come up yesterday. We had Sungi Guam say, "Just retire and watch your boss sink. You don't need the stress and drama. You've done your time, and now it's their time to enjoy life, laugh, travel, bingo. Thank you for your service." And then we have other people on the other end of the spectrum, like Chris Chip, saying, "Now to get on with the buildup." Right. And of course we have people, coming to the defense of both.
Right, and I don't think that because you want to preserve artifacts and there's just with artifacts, right? I think part of the problem is that the process, which was decided not by Guam, it was decided between Japan and the federal government, but the process is that they remove the artifacts and they take them out and then they just keep going. So I think it's reasonable if you care about, we're in the middle of this cultural renaissance where, everyone wants to speak Chamorro, everyone is proud to be Chamorro. We have a museum. I think that caring about these artifacts doesn't necessarily mean you hate the military.
Yeah.
And asking for more accountability in the processes in which the way they're handled, I think it's totally fair. I'm not saying stop the buildup. People are asking for a pause, and I think that it's reasonable because they keep discovering these ancient sites, and they're going to keep. Linda said it a couple weeks when I did a story with her. Said they're going to keep discovering sites, and so I had heard from Bob Cost that they had asked her to tone down her rhetoric, or tone down her doing her job, and so I think it's also reasonable to conclude that her being a vocal critic of the military buildup is probably part of why she was abruptly terminated.
I'm not saying that would be.
I don't even think. People are
it
like,
just seems like that's.
I think it's obvious. And so I interviewed the governor and a bunch of different people today that you guys are going to be able to see this on a KWeb News tonight. And one thing that's funny to me about these activists, and I'm really disappointed in them, and how do you beat activism is you let the activists join the system and become part of the machine. So last election we had Protect Texas, Saber Tidian, we had Kelly Marsh, Taitano, Sabina Perez. They were elected, and a lot of people said them being elected kind of meant that people agreed with what they're doing and their activism, which dealt, solely with the military buildup and the environmental impacts. And so I just think it's interesting because when Eddie Cabo was governor, these guys had no problem storming Adelup with a bunch of signs and getting in the governor's face. But now that we have this governor that this activist group endorsed, everyone is just kind of, and I know all these activists, everyone's kind of like, oh no, we better just wait, maybe Lou doesn't know the issue, or oh, we're going to have a meeting. And I just think it's so funny. When we had Eddie as governor, Republican governor, it was 0 to 100 real quick. And now that we have a Democrat governor who's obviously showing that she's not concerned on a level that the activists are about not just the discovery of these ancient sites that are getting bulldozed, but the treatment of the artifacts in them, the process which has little to zero accountability for the military. The administration, and I know this because I've just spoke with the governor, they don't feel the same way as the activists.
So what did you spoke to Lou today about Linda's termination, right?
Yeah, and so Lou, the governor, had said, it was kind of funny. She said, I've been off island, I didn't know about it, I just found out about it, I have no reaction right now. I'm like, okay, first of all, you're the governor. This isn't 1980 where you're off island, you're in a bubble, you don't know anything that's going on. This is, it's 2019.
We got phones.
We got phones, yo.
And no
We got Wi-Fi on the
We got
airplane.
Facebook chat. We got Facebook
So I
chat.
don't buy it. Like, really, you don't have a reaction? I mean, it's just, and I think that, I'm just going to say it. I think they fired Linda because they want to put a yes man in there. And I think that because of a lot of things that we're needing from the federal government, I don't think it's crazy to think that on some high level there were negotiations between the federal government and the local government. Like, hey, you want the H-2B visa? Well, take it easy on this whining about the buildup. I don't think it's unreasonable. And the governor to kind of say that she was in the dark about it, it's really,
hard to believe.
it's like you don't know what's going on in your house. And then so I asked her, I said, well, okay, because all these activists want to know, they want to have a meeting. There was like 25 different activists and community organizations that wrote a letter to the governor and said, hey, we're concerned, we want you to pause the buildup, we want to have a meeting. So I saved you guys the trouble. I asked the governor today, are you concerned with the discovery of new ancient sites on military built-up property and the way the military handles the artifacts? And the governor said that she was like, I have to look into that, Chris, because I went on a field trip and they had the last Cereanthes tree. And she was like, yeah, and I think that they have a very good system in place to deal with, the endangered species and the artifacts. So I feel like the governor is all in on the buildup, and it's really going to be, which is fine. I mean, it's a free country, right? You can support the buildup, you can be an activist, whatever, but I think if these activists are expecting her to go lay down in front of a bulldozer at Texan, it just ain't going to happen. It's not. I feel like we heard in the campaign that Lou and Josh are really excited about the economic, impact that this buildup is going to have.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, that's their thinking is that, hey, this is going to bring a lot of money to Guam, and maybe part of it too is like they feel like these senators and these activists are a very vocal minority, but. And I just feel like a lot of these activists are getting played because, man, you guys want to go off on Twitter all day, but when stuff is really happening and you have, the military possibly influencing the removal of the one person who could hold them accountable, where are you guys? It's like crickets.
Gonna play devil's
go.
advocate just to play it, right? But, I mean, what if the way that the military is handling these artifacts is, good? Like, I mean, what if it is just a proper way to handle it? Because, I mean, who else would create the ruling for that? Like, some
So here's
people here that have done this? Like,
and the governor brought this up when I interviewed her today. She said, outside of the fence line, out here, if we're to dig here and we're to find some artifacts, the process is we call the SHPO. The SHPO comes over and says, oh my God, those are artifacts or their remains or whatever. We have to stop construction, we have to turn in a work plan, we have to hire an archaeologist, but the SHPO and the office can be around, they can check, so that's what I think is missing is, we have a way to do it outside the fence line, but our involvement inside the fence line is very, very minimal, and I think it's reasonable to want us to, have some sort of say or some sort of involvement. I mean, there's the extreme side of it, which is like stop the buildup. But then there's the more moderate side, which is, hey, let us get involved with the process just for our own peace of mind. And I think a good way for the military to kind of quell this uproar is to do that, to make concessions, you know. And I don't know. I'm just curious what's going to happen.
I mean, we also have Therese Terlahi, who
Right.
gave her press release yesterday, and she said, I'll just read a portion of her quote. You can find the rest of it on our KUM's Instagram. I acknowledge that there are personal actions pending. However, I am deeply troubled by the recent move by the administration to dismiss the State Historic Preservation Officer in the midst of one of the largest construction projects in our recent history, including the bulldozing of 5,000 acres of limestone forest and numerous historic sites. We are in desperate need of persistent and loud voices pushing for historic preservation, particularly as DoD continues to insist destruction is unavoidable. To put someone inexperienced in an acting capacity and allow these projects to proceed is outright negligence and a slap in the history of our slap in the face of our 4,000-year-old history. So,
Right.
You know, a lot of people echo the same type of sentiment. I know our new coworker Tomas Menglotnia, he did a story about
story.
Pogin, right? And
Yeah.
you know, they already have their like live fire exercise on having to get bombs dropped there too, right?
Right.
So that's, you know,
So we
pretty
interviewed
crazy
these
story.
these two ladies who lived there, and they basically have to move out so the military can bomb it.
Yeah, and then
Oh my
there's like
God.
what 167, 170 people who live.
Right.
on
So
Pogin, right?
yeah, and I thought that was a really cool story because here you have these. I mean, it's not as immediate on Guam. Yes, you have original landowners from Meridian, but their land was taken like, you know, a generation ago. So it's not as immediate. Whereas in Pogin, you have these people who were just kicked out of there yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, so I really think it's cool because they're really promoting and preaching and pushing people to be more actively involved and question the military buildup. But they also said that doesn't mean we're not patriotic, and I think it's the weirdest thing for people to say that people who oppose the buildup are not patriotic, because that's the foundation that America was built on. Was, you know, I mean, freedom of speech. You know, hey, if the colonists didn't question the British government, where would we be?
I mean, are they mutually exclusive? Can we still have the buildup in some capacity, and at the same time,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's a matter of finding that kind of towing that line and finding where can we both sides can compromise on this issue and you know, live.
But I think realistically
right?
speaking,
So-
I don't know if we have, and this is something the SHPO has said too. She was like, I was told we can't stop the buildup, and the Marines have said it that, you know, no discovery is going to be significant enough to stop this project. And we were talking about billions of dollars, this whole realignment of forces. So while it may not be realistic to call, and I'm a realist, I don't think the buildup's never going to stop. It's going to keep happening. So
For
what
sure.
kind of concessions can we get along the way?
But do you think that we missed the chance to make those compromises and make our voices heard earlier in 2011 when the pragmatic,
Before all of
you know,
this.
agreement was being worked and inked out?
I think maybe that
Have we dropped the ball somewhere along that line?
I think we entered that agreement, you know, in good faith, thinking that it would be one way, and it's become another. So I mean, I don't know. I've just some weird comments too that come in on the Facebook, because you do see a lot of that polarizing of this issue, where it's like if you're for the artifacts or you care about our history and our culture, then you're anti-military, and then if you support the build-up and you know you're on this extreme,
you don't care
where
about your island.
So I think the reality is that somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, we have a Gab Beneventi saying, sounds like Guam politics at its best. Nothing ever changes. You do what they tell you to do, even if you know that they are wrong. Otherwise, you lose your job. You know, I wonder who they are covering up or who are they protecting. There was a quote let me search for that quote for a minute. Someone put a quote about, you know, thinking logically about
Right.
shooting
Yeah.
1,300 or 13 million bullets.
Yeah, so
over
I mean, these are live fire training ranges, and there's a few of them. So there was a statistic where the military had said that, hey, we're going to be shooting a gajillion bullets over the waterlands, and because they have to tell you, they don't have to make sure you're okay with it, but they have to tell you, hey,
What
this is
they're
what we're going to
doing.
do, right? So I think it was something like that. If you have like a bunch of different firing ranges, then they're going to be firing off like, I want to say it was 6 million bullets a year, which is kind of a crazy You're-
You know, when you
Put it like that,
when you hear
right.
it that way, it's
Yeah.
like, wow, that is pretty.
That's a lot of bullets.
That's pretty wild. I can't seem to find that right now. I'm still
Yeah.
kind of looking for it, but I mean, I thought it was a pretty interesting.
Or you want me to play Tomas's packet?
Comment.
Before?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you play Tomas's?
Brought
So
to
we're
you
gonna play
by
this package
GTA.
from
We
Tomas
start
Melania
with
about
you.
Pagan.
I kind of look at this as them striking a match here in Guam, and then the fire runs up to Tinian where they're going to increase the training.
Cinta Matagolay Kaipat and Cecilia Kaipat Salapeo are sisters trying to prevent what they describe as the military's fire and fury spreading through the islands. Their daughters born in the northern islands and on a mission to preserve their homeland. They're on the island to be featured on the educational TV show Nihi, explaining their efforts in the region. Cecilia was born on Pagan in 1970 and is one of some 100 registered voters and residents of Pagan.
It always reminds me of what my master navigator Cecilio will always say, and that is in navigating, you just don't look forward, you have to look back. So I incorporate that, and I am beginning to look back to see what's behind me so that I can, go back and see if I can do something to improve what we had.
She visits the island every year for a few months since the early 2000s. She and her sister, who was born in Agrigan and raised on Pagan, are...
That was a great story.
Yeah, definitely. So you can see that similar issue happening in Pagan.
But a personal touch, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? This is about people who are directly, I mean, we're all directly impacted, but these people
But they
were...
have to get up and
Yeah,
leave
yeah,
their
yeah.
island.
Yeah, and they share the same sentiment here. It's just
Right.
like
And-
for them it's all love,
And it's interesting because these are like some down home, Chamorro people. They're not some 20-somethings with, 5 million pieces of Chamorro jewelry on them. I feel like it was really a different face, and kind of, to me, I really enjoyed that activism comes in all shapes and sizes,
I mean, but back regarding the buildup, I think it's naive to think that the military has our best interests as their priority, right?
Yeah, I
Clearly,
mean,
like,
yeah.
obviously, they want the land for a specific reason that's military and tactically focused. But I don't think, personally, that, people are coming here with the intent of being evil or malicious at that route. You know what I mean? So
yeah, they
so I
are
definitely-
they're following the process that
Yeah.
was set out in the programmatic agreement. But I
Yeah.
think the problem is that we had no. But at the end of the day, the root issue is our political status. We're unincorporated territory of the United States. We just don't have a say.
So, with Richie Bonas, he's the temporary.
He's the acting SHPO, which
Right.
is I think problematic because we have some like actions that were supposed to be taken care of this week. They just discovered a recent site on I think Tuesday. So Linda Ogden had told the military, because she had just toured the week before, and they discovered 4 new sites in the last month. So one of the sites of the 3 that they had discovered had already been wiped clean. So she was surprised by that because it would only been a couple weeks, and she was telling me she was hoping to see the stuff, and
Yeah.
she didn't. So she told them with this latest discovery, don't touch anything. I want to see it in its place. And now that's all out the window. And I just get this image in my head of Rich Ibanez over there in Agani Heights at the Historic Preservation Office, just like rubber stamping everything the military wants.
I mean, so like going forward,
right.
what do you think? What kind of action do you think Lou can do
Right.
to, I guess, redeem this situation, right? Like,
It's easy. I think that, again, but being a realist, I don't think that she can lay down in front of the bulldozer and stop it. But I don't think she has no authority. If you have this buildup and you have a governor of a place, and Governor Carl Gutierrez did this before, if Lou stands up to the federal government and says, hey, we don't like you bulldozing our, ancient laddie, or we don't like you, pissing on our artifacts, it's going to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
But to just think that, it's too late, we can't stop it, that's one thing. But if Lou were to stand up and make a stance, it would raise some eyebrows. I mean, if she can get on Time Magazine for wanting to bring an abortion doctor to Guam, she can get on Time Magazine for, not hating on the buildup, but just calling for some accountability. It's really simple. And I think that's all it would take, is if she would just stand up But the thing is, I don't think she's going to stand up because I don't think she feels the same way as these activists or as Linda Ogden feels.
I mean, I think it's a very difficult situation to be in. I think there's a lot of financial and economic
Right, but that
things
doesn't
at
mean
stake here.
exactly. But if
Right.
you stand up and say, "Hey, don't bulldoze our villages," Uncle Sam is not going to pick up everything and leave.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we're allowed to criticize the military. We're allowed to criticize the buildup, and this idea that, oh no, it's such an old mentality. Like, oh no, don't say anything about, you know, because they're just going to go. They're not going to go anywhere. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to stop. They're not going to do another NAS. It's not going to happen.
Cool. On that note, guys, we would like to thank you for joining us here for TrendSpotting. Remember, you can watch TrendSpotting every
Good talk,
Thursday.
Josh.
Good job, Asha. Thank you for,
Thanks,
thank you for
guys.
sharing your input today on TrendSpotting. Catch us every Thursday. You know, if there are topics you would like us to cover, you know, feel free to leave it in the comments or message us on Facebook or on Instagram, and we will catch you next week.